everyone, it is Mike Levin on Sunday, April 3rd, 2022. Coming up on midnight, dropped my kid off on my way back. I-95 north. I-95, definitely an important road in my life growing up. I've lived up and down I-95 through my life. For a little while, I lived down in Virginia. That was moving south from where I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. And then I was in Virginia for a little while I worked for a company called Scala. No, not the programming language Scala, which is one of the JVM, Java Virtual Machine languages. Scala and I believe Clojure are two different languages that run on the JVM. That is not the company I worked for. I don't even know if it's a company. I think it's just a free and open source package. But the company I worked for was Scala Multimedia, later Scala Digital Signage, which was a spin-off from an old Commodore Amiga software company that made software of same name as the company Scala for the Amiga, and it was computer-generated TV channels, the kinds of things that you would see filled in with TV program guides and community bulletin boards and stuff. And before the internet and the web really became big, there was a lot of talk of the information superhighway and all the wonderful stuff of the digital world was supposed to be brought to us through set-top boxes. This is just before the web really took off. And so I was working for one of the kooky software companies, making software for a kooky hardware company in the fringes, off the sides of the popular distribution curve. Most people were on PCs, PC clones, there were some Macs in there, but on the fringes, on the edge, were Amiga users, the Amiga computer. And on that ran some pretty cool graphics software, some pretty cool visual stuff. They had 3D software. It's where Lightwave 3D first appeared, bundled with a video toaster, some extra special hardware that went on top of some already quite special hardware to do some legendary stuff. I remember I had a video toaster. It also had a Mandala virtual reality, augmented reality by today's terms, hardware board in there that did collision detection with graphics and basic physics. Things floated around and you could knock them around in the air in silhouette. And this was the early 90s, right? This was 1991, 92. So I had this decked out Amiga, but I started moving from place to place. I went from Philadelphia, where I grew up, moved to New York, and then in New York I bopped around a few times. I lived a few places in New York. And with each move, you divested yourself of stuff. And there was a point where I just gave that cool Amiga video toaster to a friend, Steve Elsner. I'm still in touch with him on Instagram mostly. He's a big runner, and so or walker, something like that. And so I follow him a little bit on the internet. So I have no idea if that Amiga is still around, but I wanted it in good hands, people who would appreciate it. I feel one of the regrets of my life is that I essentially threw out an Amiga 1000, one of the early serial numbers off the production run. I got it secondhand through a local tech school, Montgomery County Community College, when they were ditching an Amiga because it had a broken hard drive, and it wasn't, not even a hard drive in those days. It only had a floppy drive. Its floppy drive was broken. It was about a $300 repair. It wasn't worth them doing it, so they were ditching it. So I got my first Amiga. And so I got in on this kooky hardware platform that had really great graphics, and one of those great graphics programs was Scala Multimedia. And so I come out of college, I based my senior projects, such as it were, on the Scala product. So I already kind of knew the Scala product. I made a self-installing demo that you drag some files from floppies, double click them on your hard drive, and they combined together in one, and it became the Commodore logo flying like a Star Trek Enterprise ship. And then it became a multimedia interface where you chose buttons. And you gotta understand, this was not in the web browser, and this was before the days of the web's popularity, early 90s. So touchscreens and multimedia, all a very fringe thing. Nobody heard it, nobody did it really. It wasn't popular. But it was what I was interested in, so I went to work for a company who did that stuff. And I went to Virginia to work for them because they had a headquarters there, which they decided to keep as their main headquarters, even though they also had a place in Exton, Pennsylvania, or that came online later. But I was one of the earliest U.S. employees on board with Scala US. They opened a new company in the United States. They were a Norwegian software company. So Scala was made by oh my God. John Bomer. I'm really sorry it took me that flashback second. I'll still probably use this video. But I think he was 27 years old when he made the company, and he was one of the technology uber kids of Norway in those early days. But greatly because of Commodore's own blunders, and because of the Commodore people who ended up kind of climbing on board, as they scrambled off of the corpse of dying Commodore, they went to work for different Commodore-like companies, both in the area and back on the West Coast. So a bunch of them went to work for Trip Hawkins with his 3DO video game CD-ROM startup. But a number of them stayed in the local Pennsylvania, Westchester area. Westchester, Pennsylvania, not Westchester, New York, different neighborhood. And they went to work for different places like Scala Multimedia, who was starting a US office because Scala Norway was expanding. It was time to do some big things, rah. And that was the bandwagon I jumped on because I had Amiga skills. I knew Deluxe Paint. Although some of my graphics looked a little bit cheesy and out of place in the places I quickly produced them and dropped them into. Formative years, let me tell you. I was not cut out to be a graphic designer. It's not really my thing. I love graphics. I love Deluxe Paint. I could mock up user interfaces. In today's world, I would have probably become a user interface person. Back then, I literally designed the font that went into a cable TV set-top box back when the set-top boxes were supposed to be your doorway to the information superhighway. I made the font that went into one of these cable boxes. I designed it. I, all pixel by pixel. And made sure I could build all these different program guides. And then that was for a company called Ameritech, and they sort of lost control of it, and it was in set-top boxes across the world. And when I got back in touch with the guy, I think his name might have been David Lundy. I have to double check, but he was an awesome guy, and he almost even offered me a job at Ameritech or at Hughes Network Systems that was on a related project. And I passed it up. I passed it up to a friend named Jeff Bruette, who apparently had a wonderful experience in that opportunity doing Deluxe Paint user interface mock-up work for Hughes Network System, later one of these satellite networks that you see everywhere as an alternative to cable. So my font is not really in much use anymore, but I designed the font and in part the user interface, because the font design, worked with the program guides of a generation of set-top box, which did not inherit the world as the gateway to the information superhighway, because the internet happened. I don't think it would have been much of a different future for me anyway, had my stuff been acknowledged and, I got financial reward for that work. Life takes funny turns, and life rewards different things. And we, as creatures, as human creatures, life-living creatures, feel the reward in different ways. Money's nice, but in general, I don't give a crap about money. It's about the experience. It's about the life you're living. It's about the people you're around and the things you're doing. And while, yes, there are some versions of life that are very nice by everything being by choice and option, and you can finance everything you want to do, you know, like a trust fund kid or something, that does not challenge you, does not bring out the best in you, it does not let you discover who you are. A life with challenge lets you discover who you are. When there's too much money as a safety net, there is no challenge. You never know that you have to make it for yourself. So I've let a lot of money slip through my fingers in my days. I have not been a greedy hoarder in fear of my future. What am I going to do in retirement? Am I going to starve? I feel I'll always make it. I'll find a way. I can always add value. Even when I'm a feeble old man losing my mind from Alzheimer's, I think I'll add some benefit to whatever environment I'm in. My confidence in self is of such a level. I do not think I will ever become taking up a spot, human furniture, vegetative human furniture. It seems to me that most people think that's what they're going to be in their old age, and that they need a fat bank account that they can draw from without drawing against principal, only paying their retirement through interest, and then leaving an inheritance to their kids to totally ruin them. That seems to be kind of the American dream, right? Am I reading it wrong? It seems rather stupid to me. And those of great privilege and wealth are demonstrating that they share that thought, at least in part, by creating the trust funds for their kids, so their kids don't get the whole thing or don't get it all at once. So instead of being one of the richest people in the world overnight, they'll be just like the 1,000th richest, and it'll take them 20 years to get it because of rules. Seems kind of like a safety net to me still, but so what, right? There's always going to be the haves and the have-nots. So, to make it for yourself is nice. To have made it for yourself in such a way that you've hoarded enough material goods so that you can live off the interest is fine. You know, if humans are squirrels, that is a good way to get a return on your investment. Squirrel it away and live off the income. Not my vibe. My vibe is the carpenter. My vibe is to know the doing of things, to have and to know the doing of things, and to be able to actively do the doing of things on frequent enough occasion so that you don't get rusty. The carpenter. You have your tool set. The last video about calculus and using Python as my road to math. Okay. So, I've been let down by a lot of things in life. But not so much so that I forget that I'm actually very privileged. I've had a technology-oriented education. I've had a very interesting path. And I've known a lot of very interesting people. I've met enough different kind of people and have seen enough different kinds of living to know what I don't, to a greater extent to know what I don't want for myself, and to a lesser extent to know what I do want for myself. Make sense? A little bit? Alright. So, where are we? We're almost 15 minutes into the video, and I'm getting to money ain't all that important. It's how you vibe and how you spend your time. no matter how much wealth and influence and power and privilege any human being can accumulate in their life, they're dying by the time they're about 100 years old. By some phenomenal coincidence, the number of rotations around the sun that we're given is approximately equal to the number of fingers we have on our hands times the number of fingers we have on our hands. 10 times 10 is 100. 10 times is 100. That's how many rotations around the sun we're given. All right, take that for what it's worth. One can count their life easily. I am this plus a little bit of this. Yeah, that's cool. You know why that's cool? Because explore switches to the not so nice word. We should find some other word, but exploit. There you have it. You've seen enough, you've tried enough, you've done enough in life to have a little sampling of this, a little sampling of that, to know what you don't like, to know what you do. By the time you're 50, you're really just getting started. I mean, that might sound exhausting to a lot of you who put in years, toiling away and squirreling away that nest egg so that you could live off of the, interest in retirement, and to have a little heritage or lineage or estate to pass down. Material world stuff. Some matter matters. Some matter matters more than other matter. That usually is life. Sentient, human-like life at the top, because it knows suffering in a way that only sentient beings can know. Close under that, all the rest of the mammals. Of course, the primates near the top. Things like whales and dolphins up there. Octopi. I'll try not to be mammal-centric, but certainly mammals got down this social trick where there's a lot of interrelationships that cause needing to keep members of your tribe alive. Namely, your newborns who are helpless. Empathy. Empathy enters with mammals because no eggs and not born fully formed. Born without egg, born helpless. Yow. It's mammals. Mammals have emotion because mammals. Not all aliens are going to be mammals. Some aliens are going to be insects. Some very oxygen-rich air. Lots of plants. Big bugs. Bugs gain sentience. Bugs gain space travel. Bugs, just like in Men in Black. Bugs an issue. How do mammals paths like ours? There's going to be plenty of lizard and dinosaur races out there, trust me. Sentience is not a mammalian exclusive trick. Emotions help. Emotions mean, less ambush predation, less asshole-ish behavior. Because empathy. However, still plenty of that behavior. Because life nature first, human nature second. Life nature not nice. Life nature, survival of fittest, evolution. Things are weeded out. Not politically correct at all. Not racist. However, everyone must adapt. Social part of it changes things because guns, germs, and steel, right? All races, essentially, same raw material, same stuff. Higher order, primate. Homo sapien. Not Homo sapien sapien, I have learned. That's been dropped. There is not the thinking being, or whatever that was. There's just Homo sapiens. And all the same species. They can breed with each other, same species. Land makes a big difference. Terrain, where the higher order primates live. Long latitudes of following herds. Lots of east-west migration, unimpeded, no bottlenecks. Guns, germs, and steel. A lot of trade from the British Isles to Japan. Right? That's what we're talking about. Europe and Asia, Eurasia. A long east-west latitude. Any nasty bugs transmitted already. Herd immunity. New World, not so immune. Oy. Interesting outcomes. Humans not always that nice, of course, because product of same process as everything else. Don't set your standards too high. Expect animal behavior from animals. Adoy. However, stewards of the earth, clearly. Covering of the earth's surface, less than one would think. A lot of mountainous regions, a lot of deserts, a lot of inhospitable places, or a lot of it occupied by farming, open plains. But actual humans living there, pretty sparsely, pretty sparsely. We're clumped up. We're clumped up around the good real estate, of course, where there's waterfront properties, and more waterfront properties, right? It's all about being near water. For some people, not the mountains will do. Trade routes, gifts of geography, just good places to live because of good resources, not by the ocean waterfront, but by rivers, where the animals stop, watering holes, that kind of stuff. So, even though we're clumped up around the good real estate, our impact is disproportionately felt in gas emissions into the atmosphere, carbon, turning the trees back into carbon. So something folks ought to think about is how carbon is the vibrating edge element, right? Is it a gas? CO2 in the air, there's carbon in the air. Or is carbon a solid, like the graphite of your pencils? It's carbon, pure carbon. Trees are mostly carbon. It's air being turned momentarily back into solid stuff. You think, and this has been pointed out to me again recently, you think that the material stuff of trees is mostly the minerals being sucked by the roots out of the ground? No, not so much so. It's the carbon being pulled out of the air. Trees absorb the carbon and they emit oxygen, CO2, and emit pure oxygen. Humans take in oxygen and put out CO2, and so this perceived interrelationship, right? So it sounds all wonderful and symbiotic. Oh, the circle of life, plants and animals, we all depend on each other. Well, no. Plants could do very well without probably all humans and mammal-type life forms. There's probably plenty of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, what is it? CO2 going into the air. It's carbon monoxide from cars, carbon dioxide from our breath. So aside from the cars and our breath, there's probably lots of carbon going into the atmosphere from other sources, such that the trees and the grass don't really need the animals so much. What's the anomaly? What's the anomaly? What is the more common template for life throughout the galaxy? Will we find planets covered with plants alone? Will there always be animals? It certainly does not seem like there could be a planet of animals without plants, but maybe if some of the smallest animals were very plant-like, like plankton, it could be. It could be a planet of all animals, and the niche of plants is filled by plant-like animals. That could totally be plausible. So anyway, I get on these crazy divergence of these crazy tangents, and it's because, you know, I love science. I love life, and I think that human life in particular is one of the great gifts of matter. Matter becomes self-aware. Matter gradually becomes self-aware. And those would make, there are those who would make the argument that this is a negative thing, that by becoming these, self-aware meta creatures, we now have gained so much power that we can ruin everything for everyone else. And that it is inevitable, that it is somehow already achieved that point, and some tipping point has been passed. That was right, the Al Gore thing, the tipping point. That the tipping point of carbon emission has already passed. We're on our way to global warming. And, there's going to be all these floods, and real estate is going to be reallocated, and rich people with good land are going to lose their land. And, poor people who live inland are going to find themselves in some pretty good places, and that's a disaster. The Superman movie. So, yeah, humans will adapt, real estate will be lost, but will it come in such big floods that it's going to be biblical suffering? If you walk away from the places that are flooding, is it really so bad? You're going to have some killer, ruins. Don't make it into theme parks. Archaeology, who we were. Find new places to live, new cities. As it was pointed out to me, you may not want to make them targets for things. The corkscrew spirals going into the air, while wonderful, seem vulnerable to the space bridge message of Asimov's foundation. Don't show off your wealth and power and technological capabilities. Don't be gauche. Be more like hobbits. Live in and with and as part of the land. Don't become the Asimov underground concrete cities, but rather become the Shires, the hobbits of the Shires. Live in harmony with the land. Don't stomp on it. And don't build roads that crisscross and subdivide things such that the natural animals now can't roam, where the deer and the antelope come up to interstate highways. Solve that with tech, of course. There's all kinds of ways to solve that, from not using cars on roads in the first place to just getting the roads off of the ground. More elevated roads, high enough to be cool. It'll be a cool drive every time. Your cars don't have to fly, they just have to get off, on and off such cool highways. Well, maybe they'll glide. You're on a road, you're like, oh, there's home over there. Just gracefully off the elevated road, and you go off to your, home that walks like a spider when it's time to live somewhere else. This is our future if we want it. And, your spider homes don't always have to be fighting each other. We can live in harmony. I'll take my spider home and I'll walk it somewhere else. I want to live in the Grand Canyon for a while. There will be areas where there will be the equivalent of paperwork, the future equivalent of paperwork. It's all on the blockchain, so F it. It's paperwork just by doing it, right? See? You walk your spider down into the Grand Canyon, whatever resources you've promised to pay back with, you will. You're good for it. It can come out of your credit. You've got your reputation. So for the most part, you're free to walk your spider around places. Hang out in the cool places. Don't be rude. The same rule will always apply. That is the golden one, the perfected golden rule. Not do unto others, because you don't want to be done unto by others. So already the golden rule is stupid. Stupid, stupid golden rule. Do not do unto others. That's more like it. Do not do unto others as you would not have them do unto you. That's the perfected golden rule. Abide by it. Don't be sneaky. I'm proud of my kid. Had a wonderful drive, bringing them back to the other side. Had some great discussions, and I see I did a good job. There's different vibes and there's different ways of being, and you get to deliberately choose it. You don't have to give in to peer pressure, and you don't have to give in to your deeper or more base animal self. Even if it is your true vibe, even if doing something naughty would make you smile. Sometimes you take the high road because you don't need that in your life right now. You just don't need that grief. You collapse those probability clouds. It's very much the quantum mechanics. Every time I hear discussion of the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, I smile to myself going, yeah, that's entirely what we're doing. We're collapsing the waveform at every moment. I don't claim to have Paul Atreides prescience. Nobody has that degree of seeing the future, but we have a little bit of seeing the future, or else we wouldn't be able to drive. We have prescience, face it. Admit it. The main reason the human brain has evolved the way it has is to give us the skill, which in sci-fi is frequently called prescience. A future vision copy of the world in your head. You see it again in children cartoons like Steven Universe. The character Garnet had future vision. It made stars light up in Steven Universe's eyes. Honestly, we've all got that superpower. We've all got that ability. We sometimes see it expressed in more entertaining ways in science fiction. In other ways, of course, again, Isaac Asimov's Foundation, where it was the discipline of psychohistory practiced by Harry Seldon. It's all true. It's just a matter of degree and how soft or hard the science is. A lot of science is softer than I have given it credit for. Hard science is predictable system, reproducible. I never learned math real well. I never learned math real well because I was handicapped by algebra. Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 in high school. Oh my God, I had no idea how opinionated of a mathematical language. Not the mathematical language, but a mathematical language algebra is. Algebra is one way of looking at the world. It is one very well-defined way where all the positions of things and operations are accounted for. And it has popularized even the notion of the order of operations. Parentheses go here, multiplication happens first, then addition and subtraction. And so it gets ingrained into us that there's something correct about that order of operations that we call algebraic arithmetic. However, if one looks at the Lisp programming language, the various dialects, Scheme is a popular one, you will see that not all math is done the same way. You can take two parentheses, you can take a set of parentheses, open and close. You can put an operator at the beginning saying everything in this parenthesis will undergo this operation, like sum. And then value, comma, value, comma, value, comma, value. You encounter this object, you know exactly what you're going to do. It's enclosed in these parentheses, that's the object, it's defined. Oh, the operator is sum. What I'm going to do with things I found in this object is sum them. Value, 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 value. You know what you're going to do with them. You're going to sum them. Lisp is nice. Lisp shows you that there are orders of operations and indeed ways of looking at the world that are different from high school algebra. Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. If one embraces algebra with excessive zeal, such as I must have done, one is blinded to the fact that there are other algebraic systems, other math languages, other orders of operations, other meanings for symbols, and the positions and relationships between them than algebra lays out. It doesn't start and end that two variables next to each other, even without a dot, implies multiplication. No. dr could be not distance times ratio, but the derivative of r. And that dr could appear to the right-hand side of what is otherwise a traditional algebraic notation. So one must be trained to see that an algebraic notation can have an appendage on it, which is a derivative that refers to one of its variables because you're taking derivatives of that variable and the integral of to go the other direction. I'm starting to get this. I'm starting to get this because I did the exercise in Python with the help of a friend who walked me through it. Not with the SymPy library. It's not pip install SymPy and then import SymPy as sim and then using sim.symbol or rational or whatever. That's one path there. Many paths to math through Python. SymPy is one. SymPy for rational numbers and stuff. But to get derivatives, you can do it with loops. We started with list comprehensions, and I'm like, no, too complicated for list comprehension. You got to go to just a normal Python loop. Now you got lots of explicitness in your API. What is X? What is Y? What's a function? I turned Y into a function, def Y, open parenthesis, X, close parenthesis. So it's very clear you're going to feed the X value into the Y function. Y comes out of X. Y, open parenthesis, any value of X gives you your Y. Oh my goodness. To see calculus in Python notation is refreshing. It should be taught that way in high school. I'm going to be teaching it to my kid that way. I look forward to getting up to what we can call anything other than math. I'm going to teach my kid how to get to a six-figure income. That's what I'm going to teach them. I'm going to say, hey, look, you can make money doing this. It's like hunting. You're hunting with tech. Just learn to hunt. Here's how you use pandas. Here's how you use lists, tuples, and dicts, and sets. Here's what a hash is. Here's why dictionaries are so high performance. Here's why you should feel just as good about using keys in a dictionary as you feel about using a list and index sequential access mode. please know what index sequential access mode is, because it's based on real world. There's a conveyor belt and you're lifting the sushi off of the conveyor belt. That's index sequential access mode. You want the next sushi? Wait a moment, there's next. It's got a cursor. It's a one-way cursor because the conveyor belt in the sushi restaurant isn't going to reverse for you. So you're going to encounter that. It's easier to implement. Fire hose mode, it's in a lot of things. Forward only, read only, one directional cursors. You're going to find them in the Python context manager with open as, that as, keyword as file handle might be a forward only fire hose mode. The details are up to the people who make something that supports the context operator, support for the with keyword in Python. It really gets quite heady to understand the system. But ultimately it can be read. It can be read in the C programming language, mostly as part of the C interpreter, which mostly exists as part of the eval function. So go into C Python on GitHub, surf your way into eval, and read. Figure out the C there. I haven't, I gotta tell you, as much as I shoot off my mouth with all this Pythonista stuff, I have not really read the Python interpreter. I know I should. And I'll get there.